Hey, welcome to the New Voting Project. My name is Kunal, your host, and today we're here with Jovanka Beckles. I'd like to say a friend of mine, but maybe we're not there yet. Who knows? But she is a movement organizer, a former two-term Richmond City Council member, a longtime leader in the Richmond Progressive Alliance here in California, a children's mental health professional, a former candidate for California's 15th State Assembly District, and a Democratic Socialist in the tradition of Martin Luther King Jr. You currently serve in the AC Transit District Board of Directors, Ward 1. And of course, you're a progressive leader here in the Bay Area, which is how we know each other.
That's it.
But no, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show.
It is a pleasure, Kunal. I'm really honored to be able to sit down and have a conversation with you. You're highly intelligent young person.
Questionable sometimes.
And so always a pleasure just be able to have a sit down discussion with the youth of in our society, especially those that are engaged, as much as you are. So thank you so very much for this invitation. Really appreciate it.
Of course. All right, so let's get into it.
Yeah, let's do it.
We got some important things to talk about, but to start off, talk a little bit about your background for those of the listeners that don't know you. Touch on how college prepared you to enter this life of activism and community organizing that you embrace. So yeah, no, go ahead and talk about yourself. I guess should be pretty easy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that part is not that part is easy. The hard part is just making sure that I stay on topic and on time, because sometimes I get a little carried away. But just a quick little introduction of who I am. You pretty much said a lot of it. And but what some of your listeners may or may not know is that I was actually born in Panama, and I was born and raised there till I was about 9 years old. Migrated to the United States, as has many of my family members. Came to the United States to seek a better life, a life where where we can get good education. And so I came to the United States at 9. I should be bilingual. I guess I consider myself bilingual, but because as I've seen with a lot of young immigrants, is that we want to fit in. We want to fit in. We don't want to have an accent. We don't want to seem like we're immigrants. And so when my parents and family members spoke Spanish, I responded in English. And so that's pretty much the way I still conduct myself, in a sense. If you speak Spanish to me, I more than likely will respond in English. I really am. I so regret that, though. No, I regret that. And I sometimes see young people doing that with their parents, and I'm like, no, you're gonna regret it. So go ahead and
Yeah.
just respond in that native that language, right? Your primary language that your parents speak. But at any rate, came to the United States, lived in New York, lived in Missouri. I've lived a little bit of everywhere because my stepfather was in the Air Force at the time, and we had the opportunity to just really just see a lot of the United States. And I really credit that opportunity to who I am today, and that is someone who's just open. When you're able to experience different cultures and different areas of the country and other countries, I think that it really helps to build individuals who appreciate people for who they are, appreciate our differences. And so that's something that that's always been ingrained in me, to really appreciate people's differences, because we're not all we are not all the same. How boring would life be if we were all exactly the same, if we were all exactly looked the same? So I appreciate our differences. I went to Florida A&M, a historically Black university, so an HBCU.
Right.
We call it FAMU, the FAMU Rattlers, go Rattlers. And I really credit that to a lot of who I am today with regard to socialism and just pride in who I am, and pride in our history and and culture. Then from there, I came to California, to live with my mother and my stepfather. We were stationed at Travis Air Force Base. I'm not sure if you know where that is. That's in
Right.
Fairfield.
Yeah.
Yeah, and got my degree in psychology, minor in criminal justice, interestingly. But I really pursued my career in mental health, and so I've been a mental health specialist for over 30 years. I've worked with adult population who have mental health challenges, and but I've worked for the last 21 years with children. I've always felt that although I felt like I could make a difference, and I did make somewhat of a difference working with the adult population, I feel like I was able to make more of an impact in kids, right? Because you've heard the saying, right? It's easier, right, to
Start early, right?
start early,
We're
right?
gonna
It's
talk about that
easier,
when it comes to voting.
yes,
Don't worry.
easier to
Yeah.
build a
Yeah.
person than to repair a broken one, right? People. So I've always felt that that's been something, a passion of mine, working with young people, with children, and helping to heal them, and not only them, but also to help heal their families.
Right.
So I think that's it. I think the other question that you asked me in terms of, just a little bit about myself, my college education, I so appreciate having gone to an HBCU. I went there only because I got a full ride. I got a full ride for basketball, playing basketball.
Wow. Like
And
Steph Curry?
pardon me?
Like you like Steph Curry, you know?
Got a full ride, yeah. It
Okay.
it just, I mean, everything is paid for. Your parents don't have anything. You graduate with, and that's a whole nother story, without, debt. Although when I went to graduate school, I incurred a lot of debt that way, for, about $40,000 worth of debt trying to get my master's degree. And of course, as I said, that's a whole nother story about just student loans and student debt that we really have to do something about
Yeah. I
in
gotta
this
get Joe Biden on
country.
the show to talk about that. Yeah,
Yes, well, I give you all the luck in helping that to happen.
of course. It's gonna
But yeah, I don't know how enthused he might be about, talking about something that he doesn't seem intent on doing.
yeah, no. But I guess we should leave it there. Um, my next kind of thought is, why enter the political sphere? Obviously, we met each other at literally a campaign event for one of our candidates that we were supporting, Janani, who's been on the show, by
Yes.
the way.
All
Um,
right.
and so why kind of go towards activism and community organizing? You obviously have very diverse, roots in this country.
Mhm.
You're a psychologist, you're a specialist, but why, make that transition to politics?
Well, one of the things that comes to mind, the first thing that comes to mind is, I've always been someone who's been very empathetic to others. I've always felt people's pain, even as a child. Um, I've always been drawn to fairness and equity and justice. It's always, I was the kid on the playground, like, that's not fair. You already had a turn. And there we see a lot of children doing that on the playground. And I always, that child is going to grow up to really, I think, hope, fight for justice, because they believe in justice at such a young age. But I've always been that person who always believed in justice and equity, and what's right, and really empathizing with people's pain. And so, having worked in this field for as long as I have, one of the things that we do is I'm a wraparound facilitator specifically, and so we bring all of the um, different providers in on a team. So these specialties. So we bring in teachers, and we bring in the parents, and we bring in social workers and therapists and psychiatrists and psychologists. We bring everyone to the table to be able to help the child and the family. And again, not really focusing just on the child, because the child didn't necessarily, or aren't necessarily having these challenges on their own. The whole family dynamic it really plays a huge role in how kids grow up. Right. So although I felt like I was really making a difference doing the work that I'm doing to heal, one of the things that I recognized was that it takes more. It was going to take more than that, and what it was going to take is policies, people who can actually get into public office to create the kinds of policies that the community as a whole needs to be able to thrive. So I'm working with children and families who have parents who were incarcerated, trying to come back into this community, can't get a job, can't find a place to live. I'm watching children who are hungry, and so every time we had different types of either group therapy, individual therapy, we always made sure that we had snacks for the kids, because seeing that a lot of children are food insecure. When you're food insecure, it just creates anxiety, creates depression, but also when you're hungry, it's very difficult to focus. And so we wonder why sometimes the kids aren't doing very well in school. It's when you're hungry and you need the type of nourishment to help your brain function and your body function. So seeing all of these different things, those were things that I could do personally, but it wasn't anything either that any of my colleagues could do. What I realized that was missing was policies that would help them and their families get employment, policies that when those families were able to be employed, that would pay them a wage that could help them not just pay rent, but also buy food. Policies that would make the many of our community members feel welcomed. And so one major event that happened in all of this, at the time, I was a DJ and we were coming home late from work, and we were victims of a home invasion. These young men came in with guns, and it was the most traumatic moment of my life. But it was at that moment that I realized that, wow, the young people in our community need so much support, right? That social safety net. And so it was at that moment when one of the young men was now sort of threatening our son, and looked around in his room and saw his things that I feel all kids should have. They should be able to have games and pets if they want and things like that. And they looked around and said, wow, it must be nice to be loved. And I will never forget that, not just because of the trauma that it created for myself and my spouse, but I'll never forget it because of those words. And it was that moment after we were able to heal from it that I realized I wanted to run. I wanted to run for Richmond City Council because I wanted to be able to create policies that would help young people like these two men not feel that they have to inflict pain and trauma on others, right? On other people. So I ran for city council, lost by about 200 votes the first time, but the second time, and that's what I want folks to always remember, don't give up. So the second time I ran for city council, I won, and I'm so proud now to that in Richmond we were so organized, and we had boots on the ground. We had people knocking on doors. We were organized. We strategized. We mobilized. Helped me win. Helped Gail McLaughlin win. And then we started to elect other working class people who recognize trauma and understand the need for policy changes, right? So because of that, and because we had a majority on the city council, the things that I brought forward, we passed. And that is, in my tenure on the city council, we passed the $15 an hour minimum wage in Richmond.
Right.
We passed the first rent control policy in California in 30 years.
Wow.
We passed ban the box, and for folks, your audience who may not, that language doesn't resonate with them. Basically, everyone knows that question on applications, right? The questions that says, have you ever been convicted of a felony? Well, in Richmond, we passed that our city would take that question off of our applications. And now the state has also done that. But it starts at the local level. And that's why running and voting is so important. But these are the things that we were able to do. And that's how I became politicized, because I recognized the need for policy changes, and not just policy changes, but radical policy changes. We addressed climate change during my tenure on the city council as well. So it's so important to get involved, because we can do this. So not only did we do that, we made Richmond a sanctuary city where immigrants can feel comfortable and being able to just, have a life where they don't have to live in fear, of ICE coming and knocking on their doors. And oh gosh, I could go on, but that's really what sort of politicized me, right? The need for us to have policies that affect our quality of life.
Yeah, no, I didn't want to interrupt, but I had no idea you were a victim of a home invasion. I mean, that's just next level. I could never imagine that in California, in the Bay Area. I just honestly couldn't. And maybe that's a token to my privilege, and what I say to most folks is the bare minimum you can do is, I think what you're touching on is, you can vote, first of all. Usually mandatory to vote.
Yes.
And if you want to do more, if you feel compelled, if you feel energized, the movement is calling. Jovanka is calling. All right. Then you get involved. Right.
Then you get involved.
You get involved. Because that I think is the critical lessons the youth, adults, anybody, all different races, all different ethnicities, all different genders can learn. It's a universal skill.
That's right.
And I kind of want to twist the conversation just a little bit.
Okay.
Let's circle back to 2020, right? A very tumultuous year. Global pandemic, once in a century. We had a very prominent and significant, electoral event, presidential election.
Yep.
Top to bottom, every ballot race counted. Give me your thoughts on the year 2020.
The 2020 election, or the whole, because 2020 was,
I mean,
wow,
it's wherever you want to take it. I know my thoughts on 2020.
2020 was hell on earth. We had number 45, who was a tyrant, just a maniac, vile, evil, everything we can think of. And so he made a lot of people's lives, the majority of people's lives, just, hell on earth. But then when that election happened, it really, for me, I think that, I won't say it's what I learned, because I feel like, we've always known what organizing, mobilizing, strategizing, standing in unity, what that can take, what that can do, right? We've always known that, but 2020 really did that. It helped us, we recognized that, okay, in our anger, we were able to unify around a strategy to get this, this fascist out of office. We were able to unify. Our anger unified us, and so I love that. But oftentimes, that sometimes not enough. Just in and of itself, anger can do harm or it can do good. And I think, like in 2020, it really unified us, right? Because it helped us. It harnessed our collective rage.
It really, right? I think it did.
It motivated us.
There was tremendous. I mean, to tell you personally, and I can speak on behalf of my friends and peers as well, I became activated, post 2016 election.
Yeah.
The rise of Donald Trump.
Right.
I mean, that turned some heads. Not only, I mean, I'm sure there's statistics on this, but it turned the heads of millions of Americans in both directions, I should add.
Exactly.
I would point to the year 2016 as kind of a catalyst year where folks started paying more attention to what's going on in the world, politics, and then of course the pandemic and the election, the dire polarization, kind of created this explosion, right, of politics, especially in my life, and I'm sure in yours too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but 2020
Absolutely.
to remember.
It helped us. Yeah, I think 2020 was a year that really, that where folks, regardless of their political affiliation, recognized how dangerous this individual was. And you know um if I had a choice, you know between Biden and number 45 Trump. I hate to say his name because he's so evil. But yeah, so Biden was the better choice. But was he the perfect choice? Was he the ideal? No, absolutely not, because he still sort of bows down to a lot of his wealthy donors, and taking his time in addressing this climate issue. I do appreciate the fact that he's finally talking about climate change, and he's talking a really good game. But now it's really time for him to like put his mouth where his put his money where his mouth is, put his actions where his mouth is, and not just talk about it, but actually listen to all the young people that are on the streets, and we're on the streets today, have been on the streets all week, throughout the country, throughout the world, marching. I love the fact that young people decided, look, we're going to strike today. We're not going to class. We're going to get on the streets so that these adults can hear us. So I'm hoping that you know Biden will actually take action and not just talk. Um, but yeah, I've been a Democrat for almost 40 years. That's definitely how old I am. But I feel like I just think that we really have to, we have to get out of this two-party system. It's not fair, to, I think, a true democratic process. A true democratic process actually invites everyone into the circle. It invites everyone's voices into the circle. And I think that sometimes, because of this two-party system, that folks aren't able to be heard, who don't necessarily subscribe to either party. And I think that, I wonder, to me it seems like a lot of young people are really also understanding that the two-party system is not serving us, because in essence, they're both bowing down to the same donor class, right? The billionaire class. But yeah, haven't had make a decision in 2020. I'm glad that we all made the decision that we did, because these could be some extra dark times, had he been reelected rather.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to ask you a simple question next. There's only one answer, in my opinion, although we're all entitled to our respective opinions, of course.
All right.
Is voting important?
Voting is absolutely important. And you know Kanal, I hear people, I'm in all kinds of circles, and I hear sometimes people are just feeling so discouraged, feeling like, what's the point of voting? But it really makes a difference. Case in point, what just happened with the reelection, I'm sorry, the recall, that the Republicans tried to well, not that they tried to do, they actually did. They uh, tried to take away a governor because they lost, and this is really going to be the strategy moving forward. Mark my words, that every time Republicans lose, they're always going to go ahead and try to get whatever candidate that won, whether
They're going to
recall.
Yeah, they're going to actively subvert democratic processes,
Right.
because, well, they are self-interested, and
Exactly.
honestly, it is the antithesis to everything the country stands for. But it's going to be their go-to justification, right?
Exactly.
Like Larry Elder was calling fraud before the election had taken place.
Before the election even went to place.
I mean,
exactly.
I was like, what? A reporter point blank asked him, will you accept the results of the election in the case that you lose? He said, we're going to work together. And I said, what are we working together on? Like, it's a yes
right.
or no type of question,
Right. That's right. That's right. It's insane.
Your election, your first, a start in politics, running for Richmond City Council, you lost by 200 votes. 200 votes. I could probably count to 200, hopefully.
Right.
So, I mean,
But we accepted it. We
yeah,
accepted the results.
we moved on and we ran again.
And we ran again. Exactly. Exactly. But I think voting is important, especially if we're going to have candidates, moving forward, who are willing to speak truth to power, who are willing to be truth tellers, as one of my favorite people, Nina Turner, likes to say. We're going to have people voting and voting for working class candidates who are not taking corporate money. We're gonna have to we have to do that. We have to start electing these kinds of candidates, because when we continue electing people who take money from the fossil fuel company, from fossil fuel industry, we're never gonna, be able to address climate change by electing people who are taking the money of the very people and industries that are causing this chaos, right? That we're seeing unfold as we speak. Um, and so voting is important, because these candidates need your votes. These candidates who are going to be beholden only to you, and not the billionaire class, not the wealthy donors who help put them there, because really that's legalized bribery.
Right.
They can donate as much money as they want through PACs. You understand how those work. You can donate millions and billions of dollars if you want to a PAC that then gets funneled to that candidate, with unending commercials and never ending mailers that come to your mailboxes, because really they get it that even a lie, if you tell it enough, people then start to believe it, even if initially they're like, oh, that's not the truth. But the more they hear it, because they've sent you dozens and dozens and dozens of mailers, or that you keep seeing the commercials all day long on television, people eventually start to believe it. So voting matters, and it matters, but it also matters that we have working class people running for office, and not independently wealthy people who are not going to be working for you, but folks who they're in essence, in for lack of a better word, they're shareholders. They're now shareholders, because they just basically bought you.
Yeah.
And myself and so many other candidates, elected officials like that are on the Richmond City Council, candidates, I mean, not candidates, but elected officials in Oakland and Berkeley who took no corporate money. Look at what we're doing in our cities and what we can do when we start to elect these people at higher to higher office.
Yeah, no, I'd have to agree. Now, following that trend of thought, do you think 16-year-olds should have the right to vote in school board elections? Folks who are deciding their budgets and their textbooks, their curriculum, or even city council elections. My thought is young people need to be incentivized to be engaged, right?
Yes, they do. They do. They
and
do.
and I see an outlet of that being having the ability to vote. Like you
That's right.
mentioned, Oakland and Berkeley, I believe they have began to institute youth vote for the
Mm-hmm.
school board elections.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's a consistent trend I see in the United States. I see it in Maryland as
Yeah,
well,
Richmond as well. Richmond as well.
Richmond as
No,
well.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's not a you know radical, quote, radical idea.
No.
Um, but
No.
but why should young people? I mean, for those who are opposed to it, I'm on board.
Yeah, that's right. Look at you. I want you voting before you're 18. You
Exactly.
are engaged, you are aware, you're informed. But I guess for me, the bigger issue is that if it's going to be an equity thing, yeah, if all 16-year-olds get to vote, then absolutely I support it. But what we're seeing is this trend that's happening, nationwide, of stifling the votes, of taking away the votes, and making it so difficult for people of color and poor people to vote.
Right.
Um, you know, if we allow that by not engaging in that process and fighting it, then no, I don't want only wealthy 16-year-olds to be able to vote, and then just like others who are over 18, currently adults, who can't vote because of their rights being taken away. We're seeing that happening, voter suppression laws are popping up all over the country. And so, that being until we can get that control and get that to, if those in elected positions, right, would just stand up and fight against these kinds of voter suppression laws that are happening. Unless that happens, I think we need to get that fixed before we talk about more privileged people, 16-year-olds only being the ones who can vote. So the easier we make voting, I think the better it will be. And if we make voting easy for everyone, not just a few, not just the wealthy, not just those are privileged, white, then absolutely. The recall effort that I started to talk about earlier, look at what happened in California. Every single person who is a registered voter got a ballot, and all you had to do is fill it out and send it back in. That should be the norm, right? That should be in every single state, as opposed to making it so difficult for people to vote that we saw in 2020. People were in line all day long, and I'm so grateful for those people who were so selfless and willing to stand in line to exercise their right to vote. But if we're going to continue in this direction where we're making voting more difficult, then I don't know that we're ready to have have that pool widen, 16-year-olds. But yeah, again, if everyone gets to vote, right, and it's easy for everyone, then by all means, I want 16-year-olds. They're invested in their future. They are our future. You all are our future, young people. This world, it's our duty to leave it in this, in a state, in a livable state for the future. And when I'm not here, I want this planet to be sustainable. I want this planet to be one where you have clean water, where everyone who wants to, who wants shelter, to live indoors. I want everyone to be able to have a home. I want everyone to be able to, have food and again, clean water, right?
Food security, access
Yeah,
to clean water, access to affordable housing or housing in general, all the essential utilities. I want folks to have
right,
I want folks to have Medicare,
right,
access
right.
to technology and
Exactly.
opportunity, equitable access to those things.
Equitable.
And not based or derived from any pre-existing disparities or
That's right.
racism or stereotypes or
That's right.
sexism,
That's right.
or all the isms, ageism, for this matter. It's hard,
That's
but
right.
I think we'll get there. And that leads me to my final question, actually, which is, what is your advice to Gen Z? And I don't know where the hell they got Gen Z from, if you ask me. It seems like a pretty arbitrary thing to do. But when it comes to voting, elections, policy, wanting to be engaged, or maybe alienated, maybe ignorant, what is your advice to those that are the aspiring class of people who are going to bear the mantle in the future?
Yeah, stay in tune. Um, don't sleep on what's happening.
Yeah.
Stay awake. I want them to understand that things can get better, but it won't get better if they're not engaged in the process, if they are indifferent to what's happening, then things will not change. But if they get out, they march. I mean, look at the uprising that happened in the summer of 2020 over George Floyd, that murder that occurred. Things wouldn't this cop wouldn't he might not have ever been convicted or even charged had folks, had we not risen up, had we not rose up, like, right, we rose up. We said, no, this is deplorable and unacceptable, and this man needs to be charged, right? So we see what can happen when we stay engaged, when we participate in direct action. um, things can change. But I just, I think it's important also for people to, we have to take care of ourselves. We have to make sure that we're staying healthy emotionally as well as physically. We have to do what you're doing. You have a podcast. You're talking about the issues. Let's stay engaged in ways like that. I want, when it's time to volunteer for candidates, because grassroots candidates, we cannot beat our well-funded opponents without volunteers knocking on doors, making phone calls, text banking. We can't do it because we can't compete financially, right? Because they're going to be having millions of dollars every single time. But what they can't compete with, right, is our people power. What they can't compete with is having, dozens and thousands of volunteers talking to people directly. Because what really matters is me knocking on your door, having a conversation with you. You get an opportunity to ask me questions. Well, hey, I heard, X, Y, and Z. And then I get to say, oh, yeah, well, that's not true. And here's why it's not true. And you can also do your own research. So grassroots candidates, working class candidates really need volunteers. Because I imagine, especially as young people, you're not working with a lot of money. So it's not like you can say, oh, I'm going to donate a lot of money. But, $2, you can go to Starbucks and buy $10 worth of frappes or whatever. Then certainly you can send $5 into that candidate, because no amount of money, $2, no amount of money is too little, because every little bit helps, whether it's money, whether it's just volunteering. So stay informed, stay engaged, organize, mobilize, strategize, as our brother Killer Mike loved to say, because that's really where, how we win, and that's how we change this corrupt system, this justice system, and all that.
Yeah, and shout out to Killer Mike, by the way. You're more than welcome on the show.
Oh yeah,
of course, gotta respect. But no, those are great answers. And I guess on yourself, how can viewers stay updated on you? You want to link your socials? I'll put them in the description.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you follow me, by the way. I should make that clear. You follow. She follows me back. So
I follow you back. That's right. That's right. Because I follow. One of the things I want to remind folks is sometimes, especially during campaigns, the candidate is so busy doing things that we have volunteers who sometimes take care of our social media. And so I think one really eager volunteer just kind of refreshed my Twitter. And so now I'm trying to follow people back, but it's like I just can't keep up. So if I don't follow you, inbox me and say, hey, Jovanka, what's up? Follow me back. I will definitely do it, because I appreciate people. I appreciate you all. We need each other in this movement, right? We need each other, and we have to support each other if we're going to change the state of the world right now.
Of course, yeah. And so it's at Jovanka Beckles, I think?
At Jovanka Beckles, yes.
Exactly.
On Facebook, as well as Twitter.
Perfect.
And Instagram. Not on TikTok yet, but well, not as a can.
Yeah.
But
TikTok's a separate. Let's do another interview just on TikTok. The impact of that.
Yeah.
In any case, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. One of the things I didn't get a chance to say is that my most recent appointment is that I was recently elected to the AC Transit Board, and transportation is important. I know, especially as students. And so one of the things, one of the policies that I'm working really hard to do is that, it's for us to have free transportation, because I think it's a right. You should be able to just, get on the bus and go where you need to go. So, of
course,
so follow me that way too.
You should talk. You should talk to Latifah Simon about that. I've been trying to get her on the show. She's a BART director, but hey, let's talk about free transportation for the youth.
Yes, indeed.
Maybe that makes it easier for us to vote. Who knows?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Just
free. Hey, free transportation on election day. How's that?
You're preaching to the choir here.
Right.
Yeah, let's call her after this. Be like, hey, where you at?
Yeah.
But no, thank you so much for your
My
perspective,
pleasure.
time, for the work that you do. I know, in my opinion, working locally in politics is where you can really touch people.
Yes.
It's where
Makes a difference.
you can feel it. So no,
Yeah.
thank you for all you do. You're always welcome back on the show.
Oh, hey, I'm happy to. Send
Yeah,
me an invitation. I'm down. I'm down to talk
exactly.
about anything you want to talk about. As long as you want me, I'll make some time to make it happen.
Exactly. And that's what we need. So thank you so much, Jovanka. Take
You're
care.
welcome. Pleasure. Take care. You too. Be safe.